Do you have the tight hips on you? Do you struggle trying to get into certain positions comfortably? If so, you've come to the right place. I'm going to show you a very simple passive stretching drill you can do to open up some of that hip range that you've been missing out on. So to start this, we're going to get into what we call a side lying position. And from the side lying position, the hip we're stretching is the one out in front of us. I have my left hip at a 90-degree angle along with my knee at a 90-degree angle. From here, you shouldn't feel much stretch at all unless you have a ton of tension. So to start opening up that range, we'd want to be able to get into more of that hip flexion and external rotation. So to achieve that, we're going to just come up onto our forearm here. So this is level 1. So most of you will be able to do this pretty comfortably. If you already feel a huge stretch on the outside of your glute area, this might be your starting stretch and your starting position. That's okay, you got to start somewhere. But for most of you, this is going to be pretty easy. So the next step from here is coming from this low oblique position up until this high oblique. So now I'm on my hand instead of my forearm. And from here, I feel a little bit more tension in the backside of my hip, but not a ton. Again, if you feel a ton, this might be as far as you're going for this session. But to take this to the next level, again, we're trying to achieve more of that range. We're going to try to sit up straight. Now, if you can, we'd want to be able to sit up nice and tall without leaning. But if you have to, you can use your fingertips or your hand for support. But we want to try to be as vertical as possible. Now for half of you, this might be as far as we're going, which is totally fine. But for those that don't feel much of a stretch yet, the next level is starting to lean forward. Now as I lean forward, I feel a ton of tension on the backside of my glutes in those hip external rotators. And of course, if you need to, you can use your hands for support here. So now that I found a good beginner stretch for me, I'm gonna just hang out in this position for a good 2 minutes. And that way I get the best bang for my buck with that time. But if you don't feel much of a stretch here, then we can keep this train rolling. I'll show this from the other angle just so you can see how much I'm leaning. Now remember, the goal is a hip stretch, so I'm not trying to just move through my spine. I'm just trying to hinge from my hips, and that way I can really feel that hip increase. And if you can, what you'd want to be able to do is progress until you're on your forearms here. If you need a little bit more room, you could prop up a little bit, kick that back leg straight into almost like a pigeon stretch. And then from here, holy smokes, am I feeling a lot of tension on that outside hip. Now only a select few of you will be able to get into this position, but when you're here, this is when you want to start your 2-minute timer. And during your 2 minutes, you can add some more movement. So showing this from the front, as I'm down in this kind of pigeon pose, I can start to rock side to side, and as I rock side to side, I'm continuing to try to fold further and further. And then of course you can do your other side, and if your other side is a lot tighter, you might not be able to get to that same stretch. On my right side, I might start more in that upward lean, which is totally fine. We just got to meet our joints where they're at. So after you've stretched your 2 minutes in that position, you can get in comfortably. You can just recheck your ranges. A couple self-audits you can do before you do these passive stretches is try getting into a cross leg position and see how comfortable you can get there. Or you could check your cross leg in a seated position by simply just bringing one leg onto the other. So I could tell I still got some tension here. Ideally, we want to be as parallel to the ground as possible, but everybody's hip's different. Now you might not be able to get parallel after just doing this stretch once. So this is something you'd want to incorporate, especially if you have a lot of tension. So if I check my left side, I can tell I have a little bit more work I have to do, but now I know exactly what I need to do to start opening up those ranges. Now I just passively showed you how to open up that hip range, but for long-lasting results, we'd want to do an active stretch to where as we open up that range, we want to contract the muscles within that newfound range, and that's what holds on to those neurological changes for longer periods. I can clearly nerd out if you let me, or you could just check out this progression video to take that next step.